Stop. Don't skip this, because the quarter sitting in your pocket right now could be worth way more than 25 cents. And if you miss this one detail, you could literally throw away hundreds, even thousands, without ever knowing it. Here's why. Most people think a 1965 Washington quarter is just pocket change. Nothing special. Nothing rare. Just another coin you get back at the store. But that's exactly why this coin is so dangerous. Because hidden inside millions of ordinary-looking 1965 quarters, there are a few that collectors are quietly hunting and paying serious money for. But here's where it gets interesting. In 1965, something major changed in U.S. coins. Something most people never even heard about. That was the year the U.S. Mint stopped making quarters out of 90% silver and switched to a copper-nickel blend. So in theory, every 1965 quarter should have zero silver, and that's what everyone believes. But the truth? Not all of them followed the rules, and most people completely miss this during the transition. A small number of 1,965 quarters were accidentally struck on leftover silver planchets from 1964. Same design, same year, but completely different metal. And that tiny mistake, that's where the real money is. But don't get excited just yet, because spotting one is not as easy as you think. At first glance, they look identical. Same George Washington portrait, same eagle on the back, same worn edges after years of circulation. Nothing screams valuable. And that's exactly why they slip through people's hands every single day. But here's the first clue most people overlook. Check the edge. A normal 1965 quarter will show a brownish copper stripe along the edge. That's because it's made of layers. Copper inside, nickel on the outside. But a rare silver version? No stripe. Just a clean, solid silver edge. And copper. No brown line. Just one consistent color. And that one tiny detail can turn 25 cents into something much bigger. But wait, because it gets even more interesting. Even if your coin doesn't have silver, it could still be valuable. And this is where things really start to get crazy. Some 1965 quarters were struck with errors. Real mint errors. The kind collectors go wild for. We're talking about coins with double designs, where letters or numbers appear slightly duplicated. Coins that look a little off, but most people ignore. Coins with weak strikes, missing details, or strange textures. And here's the thing. Most people assume those are damaged. So they spin them. Or toss them into a jar. Or forget about them completely. But collectors? They see something different. They see rarity. They see opportunity. They see value. But the real value isn't what you think, because not all errors are equal. Some might only be worth a few dollars. Others, hundreds. And in rare cases, even more. But there's one specific detail that can change everything. Wait. Yeah, wait. Sounds simple, but it's powerful. A standard 1965 quarter weighs about 5.67 grams. But a silver quarter, it's slightly heavier, around 6.25 grams. That difference might seem tiny, but to a collector, it's everything. And here's the scary part. Most people never weigh their coins. They never check. They never even think about it. So they miss it. They lose it. They spend it without a second thought. And that's exactly how valuable coins stay hidden in plain sight. But here's where it gets even more unbelievable. Some of these rare 1965 quarters have already sold for thousands. Not because they look flashy, not because they shine brighter, but because someone knew what to look for. Someone paid attention to the details, and someone else didn't. That's the difference. Now think about this. How many quarters have passed through your hands? Hundreds. Thousands? How many did you actually check? Probably none. And that's what makes this so exciting and a little scary. Because the next time you get change, you might be holding something rare, something valuable, something most people would completely ignore. But here's one more twist. Even if your 1965 quarter doesn't have silver and doesn't have obvious errors, condition still matters. A lot. Coins that look almost new, with sharp details, clean surfaces, and minimal wear, those can still bring in surprising money. Collectors love coins that look untouched, coins that feel like they just came out of the mint, and those are getting harder to find every year, because most have been used, scratched, worn down over decades. So when a clean one shows up, people notice, and they pay for it. But here's the biggest mistake people make. They assume value is obvious. They think a valuable coin should look different, stand out. Be easy to spot. But that's not how it works. The most valuable coins, they hide in plain sight. They look normal. They feel ordinary. And that's why they're so easy to miss. So before you spend another quarter, before you ignore that loose change sitting on your desk, take a second look. Check the edge. Look for that missing copper stripe. Feel the weight. Watch for anything unusual. Because one small detail, one tiny difference, could mean the difference between 25 cents and something worth far more. And once you see it, you'll never look at your coins the same way again. And here's the scary part. Most people have no idea they're holding it. They spend it. They lose it. They ignore it. And just like that, a small piece of metal that could have paid for groceries, gas, or even a bill is gone forever. But what if I told you the coin I'm about to show you looks completely normal, yet collectors are actively hunting it, and the difference between a 25-cent coin and something worth real money comes down to details almost nobody notices? Stay with me, because this gets interesting fast. We're talking about the 1980 Washington quarter with no mint mark. At first glance, it looks like any other quarter. Same George Washington portrait, same eagle on the back, same silver color tone depending on lighting. Nothing special, right? That's exactly why people miss it, because the most dangerous coins are the ones that don't look dangerous at all. But here's where it gets interesting. In 1980, Washington quarters were still being produced in massive numbers. Philadelphia struck coins without a mint mark. Denver used a D. San Francisco used an S. So when you see a no mint mark 1980 quarter, most of the time, it simply means it came from Philadelphia. Common, normal, spendable. At least, that's what most people think. But not every 1980 no mint mark quarter is treated equally. And this is where collectors start paying attention, because small variations, subtle errors, and condition shifts can turn something ordinary into something highly desirable. And most people completely miss this. Let's slow down for a second. Take a regular quarter from your pocket. Look at Washington's face. Look at the edges. Look at the date. 1980. Now check something almost nobody checks. The sharpness of the strike. If the details look unusually crisp, if the hair lines on Washington's head stand out more than usual, if the lettering looks deeply punched in, you might be holding a stronger strike variety. And yes, that alone can increase collector interest. But we're not done yet, because the real value isn't just about being a no-mint-mark coin. It's about what happened during production. And this is where things get weird. Some 1980 quarters show signs of die wear. That means the metal stamp used to strike the coin was getting old, slightly damaged, or overused. And when that happens, tiny details start to fade or distort. Washington's face might look slightly softer, letters might look weak, edges might lose definition. Most people think that means the coin is damaged, but collectors see something different. They see a variation, and variations create demand. But here's the twist. Not all weak strikes are valuable, and not all strong strikes are worth more. What actually matters? Condition. And this is where things get intense. A 1980 Washington quarter in average circulated condition might still just be worth face value, but in higher uncirculated grades, especially coins that look like they were never used, the value can climb. And some collectors will pay a noticeable premium for pristine examples. But we're still not at the most important part, because there's something else hiding in plain sight. And most people never think to check it. It's the edge of the coin. Run your fingers along it. Is it perfectly uniform? Or does it feel slightly different in one section? That could indicate a striking inconsistency. And while most of these are minor, certain minting quirks can attract specialist collectors who look for oddities others ignore. But wait, there's another layer. Let's talk about mint mark confusion. Even though this is a no mint mark quarter, a huge mistake people make is assuming every missing mark is normal. Sometimes the mint mark can be weak, filled, or nearly invisible due to grease-filled dies during production. That creates confusion. And confusion in coin collecting often leads to opportunity, because what one person thinks is just a normal quarter, another person might pay extra to own because it looks unusual or incomplete. And now we get to the part most people have been waiting for. What is this coin actually worth? Here's the honest answer. Most 1980 Washington quarters with no mint mark are still only worth face value. Yes, just 25 cents. But here's where the story changes. In higher mint state condition, these coins can sell for a few dollars, sometimes more depending on eye appeal and demand. And if you find a rare error version, or a coin in exceptionally preserved condition, collectors may pay significantly higher prices, not millions, not thousands for most, but enough that people who ignored their change jars suddenly wish they hadn't. And that's the real danger here, because the value isn't just in what the coin is, it's in what you recognize. Point two people can hold the exact same quarter. Point one spends it on soda. The other sends it to grading and gets a surprise. And here's the final twist most people never hear. Coin value isn't just about rarity. It's about timing. Trends shift. Collector demand changes. and coins that were ignored for decades suddenly become interesting again when attention returns to them. So that ordinary 1980 numismatic quarter, it might not change your life, but it could absolutely be worth a second look. And if you've been following this far, here's what I want you to do next. Go check your coins. Not just once. Really look. Because the next time someone spends a quarter without thinking, it might be the exact one a collector has been searching for. And the craziest part? It could already be in your pocket right now, waiting to be noticed. And I'm not talking about rare museum coins or ancient treasures. I'm talking about something you could get back and change today. Something people are literally spending without a second thought, while collectors are quietly paying serious money for it. But here's where it gets interesting, because one specific coin from 1981 is starting to confuse even experienced collectors. At first glance, it looks completely normal. Nothing special. Nothing rare. Just another Washington quarter. But that's exactly what makes it dangerous to ignore. Now imagine this. You're cleaning out an old jar of coins. Pennies, nickels, quarters, all mixed together. You almost spend them at a store. Maybe you already have. But one of those coins could be hiding a detail that turns it from pocket change into something people are actively searching for online. And most people completely miss this. We're talking about the 1981 Washington quarter with a P mint mark. Sounds boring, right? That's what everyone thinks at first. But don't tune out yet, because this is where things start shifting fast. The P mint mark means it was struck in Philadelphia. And in 1981, something subtle changed in the way these quarters were made. Not enough to make headlines back then, but enough to create variations that collectors today are paying attention to. And the real twist? Most people don't even realize they're holding one of these coins because it doesn't scream rare. It blends in. It hides in plain sight. But here's the question that changes everything. What if your coin is one of the better conditioned versions? Or even one with a small error that most people would never notice? Because that's where value starts to climb. At face value, sure, it's 25 cents. Maybe 50 if someone is being generous. But in the collector world, condition is everything. And in some cases, a clean, high-grade 1981 Washington quarter with a P mint mark can push far beyond what you'd expect for something this common. And we're not done yet, because there's another layer most people completely miss. The 1981 quarters exist in huge numbers, but not all of them survived in the same condition. Think about it. Most of these coins went straight into circulation. They were spent, scratched, tossed into cash registers, dropped in parking lots, forgotten in drawers. So when one shows up in near perfect condition, collectors notice. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Some of these coins have tiny production quirks. Small differences in strike quality. Slight variations in detail. Things you'd only notice if you were really looking closely. And those tiny differences? That's where collectors start paying attention. Now imagine this for a second. Two people find the same exact coin. Same year. Same design. Same mint mark. One person spends it without thinking. The other person realizes something feels off, something different, and decides to look it up. That second person? They might just uncover a coin worth way more than expected, but most people never get to that step because they don't know what to look for. And that's exactly why this coin keeps showing up in hidden value discussions among collectors. But here's where things take a sharp turn, because not all 1981p Washington quarters are equal. In fact, the vast majority are still only worth face value. That's the truth. No hype, no exaggeration. So what separates a common quarter from a valuable one? It comes down to three things most people never check. First, condition. The closer it is to uncirculated, the more serious collectors care. Second, strike quality. If the details look unusually sharp or unusually weak in certain areas, that can matter. And third, the hidden factor most beginners completely ignore: demand timing. Because collector interest shifts over time, and certain years suddenly become hot again without warning. And when that happens, coins that were ignored for decades suddenly get a second look. But wait, there's something even more important you need to understand here. Because the real mistake people make isn't just spending these coins. It's not even checking them at all. Think about how many quarters you've handled in your lifetime. Hundreds? Thousands? Now think about how many you actually inspected closely. Almost none. And that's where opportunity hides. Because while everyone assumes modern coins are worthless, collectors are constantly scanning through them looking for overlooked pieces. And every once in a while, they find one. A coin that sat unnoticed for years. A coin that passed through dozens of hands. A coin someone almost spent at a vending machine. And suddenly, it's not just a quarter anymore. Now let's bring it back to the 1981p Washington quarter. There's a reason it keeps getting attention in collector circles. It represents that exact kind of hidden in plain sight opportunity. Not flashy, not obvious, but quietly interesting when you know what you're looking for. And here's the part that catches most people off guard. Even coins that aren't ultra rare can still carry premium value if the right buyer comes along. A collector filling a set, someone hunting high-grade examples, or a buyer looking for a specific condition range. That demand can push prices far beyond what common sense would suggest for a quarter, but only if you recognize it, because once it's spent, it's gone, and you might never see it again. Now imagine this. You go back home after watching this, grab a handful of change, and actually look. Really look. You flip over a few quarters. Most are ordinary. But then one catches your eye. It looks different. Cleaner. Sharper. Or maybe just unusual enough to make you pause. That pause is everything. Because that's where discoveries begin. And maybe, just maybe, that coin you almost ignored is part of a small group that collectors quietly pay attention to. Not because it's famous, but because most people never notice it in the first place. And that's the real secret with coins like the 1981 Washington quarter with a P mint mark. Value isn't always loud. Sometimes it's hiding in the most ordinary place you can imagine. Right in your pocket, right in your change jar, right where you least expect it. So before you spend your next quarter, ask yourself one simple question. What if this is the one everyone else missed? And I'm not talking about a few cents here. I'm talking about a coin that could quietly turn into something collectors actually chase. while everyone else treats it like pocket change. But here's the strange part. Most people don't even realize this coin is worth looking at in the first place. It looks normal. It feels normal. It even sounds normal when it hits the table. And that's exactly why people miss it. Now imagine this. You dump out your spare change at home, and somewhere in that pile is a coin that experts would immediately stop and examine closer, not because it's flashy, but because something about it just doesn't add up. And today, we're going to break that down step by step, because by the end of this video, you'll know exactly what to look for in the 1986 Washington quarter with a P, mint mark, and more. Importantly, what most people are completely overlooking. But first, you need to understand why this coin even matters. The 1986 Washington quarter was made in massive numbers. We're talking hundreds of millions. So at first glance, it should be worthless beyond face value. And for most of them, that's true. Most are just 25 cents. But here's where it gets interesting. A small number of these coins didn't come out normal. They carry tiny differences, minting quirks, strike issues, little imperfections that turn an ordinary quarter into something collectors will actually pay attention to. And most people completely miss this because they're looking for the wrong thing. They think value is about shine or age. But with this coin, value is about detail. Now let's slow this down for a second. If you have a 1986 quarter, the first thing you need to check is the mint mark. The P means it was minted in Philadelphia. That alone doesn't make it rare, but it sets the stage for what you need to look at next, because some of the most interesting examples of this coin aren't obvious at all. They hide in plain sight. And this is where most people stop watching coins and start spending them. But don't do that yet, because there's a specific type of 1986 P quarter that collectors get excited about, and it has nothing to do with the date itself. It has everything to do with condition and errors. Now imagine holding a coin that looks normal at first, but under closer inspection, something feels off. Maybe the lettering looks slightly doubled. Maybe the strike looks weak in certain areas. Or maybe the rim just doesn't look clean and consistent like it should. And if you're thinking, that sounds too small to matter, you're exactly the kind of person who would have spent a valuable one without realizing it. Because here's the truth, in coin collecting, tiny details can turn 25 cents into something worth 10 times, 50 times, or even more in rare cases. But here's where it gets even more intense. Some 1986 quarters with unusual characteristics have shown up at auctions and collector markets, and while most are still modest in value, the right error combined with strong condition can push prices far beyond what anyone expects for a modern coin. And most of those coins were found in everyday circulation, pocket change, coin rolls, old jars, not treasure chests, real life. Now I want you to picture something for a second. You're sitting there, going through coins like it's nothing special. And then you notice one quarter that just looks slightly different. It doesn't scream rare. It whispers it. But the real value isn't what you think. It's not just about being old. It's about being overlooked. And that's the key. Because the 1986 Washington quarter with a P mint mark becomes interesting only when it breaks expectations. And that's exactly what collectors are hunting for. Now let's go deeper. Point one of the biggest mistakes people make is assuming that all coins from the 1980s are too modern to matter. But that's not true. Modern coins can still carry mint errors, misalignments, and striking issues that make them desirable. And when those errors are paired with a coin that's still in strong condition, things change fast. But here's the twist most people don't expect. Even without dramatic errors, condition alone can matter more than anything else. A sharply struck, well-preserved 1986 p. quarter that looks like it just came from the mint bag can stand out to collectors who build sets based on quality. And that's where value starts stacking. But we're not done yet, because there's one more thing you absolutely need to understand. Coins like this often get dismissed because they're common. But common doesn't always mean worthless. It just means most people haven't looked closely enough. And that's exactly why opportunities exist. Because while everyone else is ignoring them, a small group of collectors is actively searching through rolls, bank boxes, and collections looking for exactly these kinds of overlooked pieces. Now let's bring it all together. If you find a 1986 Washington quarter with a P mint mark, don't just toss it aside. Look closely. Check the strike. Check the lettering. Check the overall condition. And most importantly, don't assume it's ordinary just because you've seen thousands like it before. Because the truth is, most valuable finds in modern coin collecting don't look special at first. They look familiar until they don't. And that's what makes this so exciting. Because somewhere out there right now, someone is holding a coin just like this, completely unaware that it might be the one that collectors actually want. And it could be sitting in your pocket right now. So before you spend your next quarter, take one extra second. Look again. Because sometimes the smallest coins hide the biggest surprises.